Hi everyone. Thought I'd just jump in and say a quick hello and to share what's kind of been going on in the background of what's coming through. Recently, I've been showing a lot around incarnations and why we have chosen to be here right now. And what I'm actually showing is we have chosen this incarnation. One of the main reasons why we've chosen this incarnation is pretty much to experience the ascension process, which is the shift of consciousness from a third dimensional reality into, and I'll just call it different consciousness. We used to talk about third, fourth, fifth dimensional realities, and it can go a lot higher than that. Doing consciousness work, we can go into so many different consciousness, and as soon as we go into these different consciousness, we actually shift into a different reality. And anyone who's worked with me will know what that means, because you might just say, if you haven't done this work, well, what's happening right now is all that's actually happening. But when you do consciousness work with me, you'll realize that what's actually happening is all a persona that was created in your own mind, and it can change in an instant. Honestly, if anyone wants to find out more about that, message me, because there is so much fun in consciousness work. How in one moment you could be thinking that something is true and your life is what it is, and then in the next moment it can be completely different. I love doing it, so message me if you guys want to do that for yourselves. But something else I've been showing around this, so we've been here really, in the past, we've never really had access to shifts of conscious realities. In the past, we've just accepted that this is actually how things are and we have to just deal with them. And it's more about our reactions to them rather than having any kind of say in what's actually happening. But now, thank the Lord, we actually have so much more that we can do through consciousness and conscious realities. So what I've been showing is, especially when you watch shows or look at history and where we've come as a human race, we really were prehistoric creatures at one stage in the past. And then we evolved into creating cities and towns. And now we have evolved to a place where we are very highly technological, and I'm able to do a video that you can watch, and you can even watch it live no matter where you are all around the world. So again, that is strange within itself. If you showed someone this hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you would actually think that that was magic, or it would be something that wouldn't exist. But we have evolved as a human race to the point where this is now a reality. And I just think we need to first off accept that this is exactly what we're experiencing right now, and how much we have evolved since the prehistoric and the caveman ages, and then on to, just different levels of realities, if you want to call it, into this current consciousness. So you are now seeing me on a video, and if you're on Facebook, you're seeing me live. If you're seeing it through YouTube, you're seeing a video recording. Again, that will be sitting in an internet, which is probably called the cloud. And again, it doesn't matter where you live, you're actually seeing it in this time and this place. So to say this to someone before, now, it's like saying to a spider that you can fly in a plane. Now that doesn't make sense to the spider. That's actually still back in a consciousness of, I'm just a spider crawling on the ground. If you said to a spider, you can actually go into a plane and fly around the world, it just will not make sense, because the concept of an aeroplane would not even make sense to the spider. So it's just different stages that we have had as humans to get us to where we are now, so that we don't even question how we can speak to people live on a video in real time. We don't question it because we have evolutionary, through processes, gotten to this stage. So what I've been shown is that we've gone through the stages of evolution where we have been cavemen and prehistoric, where we had to learn to survive. We had to learn how to create shelter, to save ourselves from potential threats. And that was pretty much all we knew back then. There was nothing else that we consciously knew about life other than survival. Now, as we have evolved, we've gotten ourselves to a place where most of us have shelter, most of us have access to unlimited food. And I'm saying most, not all, but most of humanity has access to all of this. However, the human brain hasn't really evolved that much since prehistoric stages, where we are still living in survival, even though the reality is that we don't need to. Does that make sense? So the reality is showing us that we have access to food, we have access to shelter, we have access to water, we have access to all these things, yet most of us in our minds are still living in survival mode. I don't feel safe. I don't know if I'll be able to eat tonight, or I don't know if I'll have money to survive. Now, that's what the human brain, or the perception that the human brain is creating, which in our own lives is creating a concept of a reality, which when we look at what is actually true, none of that is actually true. We have access to everything. So through an evolutionary process, our minds are still acting like cavemen minds in a reality that is highly technological, that we have access to everything. So from an evolutionary process, our next stage is to get our minds connected to what is actually really happening, not what used to happen in the past and what is actually, our future and where we're going. For us to evolutionary change, we need to get our brains connected to the concept that we have access to everything that we need, and we actually do. Our brains aren't designed for that yet, and it hasn't clicked into that, so we're still living in survival, or a lot of people are still living in survival. So that's our next steps in the evolutionary process, is to get our brains to shift consciousness. Now, consciousness is a level of awareness of what I think is true and what I know to be true. And we're shifting from the human consciousness of survival into a consciousness of universal intelligence, which is, we have access, as soon as we go into deeper and deeper consciousness, we have access to deeper awareness and deeper knowledge, which then allows us to see this in a reality, because whatever's going on within our heads will actually be true in our external world. And I see it time and time again. I can have someone speaking to me saying this is what is true, and in the next moment I can get them going, well, that's actually not true at all. It's through consciousness shifting. So from an evolutionary process, that is our next step, is consciousness, and shifting our consciousness from a reality that we think is true into a reality that is actually true, which is into a reality then of what is possible. And as we keep moving on, the external world will move with us. But so it's no surprise in our society now, the biggest issue in the world is mental health, because that is the next stage of our evolutionary process, is to deal with this. Now, if we use old processes to deal with mental health, we're going to keep trying to use the same things. It's like trying to make a house with to build a house with a shovel. Like, we need to do something different along the lines of our evolutionary process to deal with the mental capacity that we're dealing with right now. So what I have learned through the work that I do, and literally the work I do is literally received from the universe. I do not create it. I don't make it up. It is given to me, and then it just happens to work. What I do in my work is use consciousness to shift the reality of what we're seeing and what we're experiencing into what is actually true. And then what happens is the external then changes to what we're actually think is and know is true. So it's very interesting to see from our evolutionary process. Number one, we've incarnated into this life to have this experience of third dimensional reality, which I will say for my life was actually probably half of my life was a third dimensional reality. And now through consciousness work, I've been able to shift into different realities, which enable us to have access to different experiences. So it's time for us, and we are very lucky to be incarnated here in this time and place. And we have chosen this incarnation to have this experience because it's never really been had before. So it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time. Now, I have this other question coming up around, well, the planet, overpopulation, chemicals, like what we're doing. Apparently, we need to know that as we shift consciousness, consciousness is the key. As we shift consciousness, those things will also shift and change. Another reason why we need to do this work is use consciousness as our next evolutionary step to changing the reality of what it is to be a human on a planet to have these experiences. I hope this all makes sense to you, but this is definitely the way we're going. Again, if you're alive on this planet right now, this is your evolutionary pathway. Consciousness is the key to moving through what you wanted to experience as a person or as a soul, as a person, as a human on this planet, having these experiences. And that is your purpose and why you're here. So again, I'll keep sharing the stuff that comes through around how we do that and what we can do about it. But just know that the things that we are currently doing to evolve, as in needing more, making more, even growth, it's not a physical growth is not our evolutionary process anymore. And needing more and wanting more is actually not next on our evolutionary process, or creating more is not. It is all from a level of consciousness where we do all of that within ourselves, which then creates that reality. So it's very exciting, and to be honest, it's much easier than what we physically think we need to do, because we don't physically do anything. It's all from a mental position, if you want to call it that. So I'll keep sharing how to do it. I'm going to do a webinar, free webinar next week about how you can use your thoughts and your feelings to have a consciousness shift, because they are the keys to these next steps. So it's very, very exciting time. And again, if you've chosen to be here, then you are here for a reason, and you're here to experience this consciousness shift. So know that what you think needs to happen on the planet and within yourself is actually not what you think at all. It's all to do with consciousness, and shifting your consciousness will actually shift everything in your reality and awareness. Thanks for joining me, and if you've got any questions or anything, pop them below, and I'll just keep popping in and keep sharing what comes through from the universe. This universal intelligence, this is what I'm showing is our next steps, and exactly why we've chosen to be here. And I'm excited because I can already see how much of a difference it makes, and I'm going to pass all this on to you guys as well. Love you, and share this if this actually makes sense to you and you think that is something that is going to make a difference to others. And also anything else that comes through, I will keep sharing, and if you guys can keep sharing, and we can keep the flow of evolutionary process occurring. Just remember, it's never what you think it is. Take care. Have a great week. Bye.